Welcome to the Kingdom Footprints podcast, a place where the footprints of faith are traced across the nations and the stories of God's work are brought to life through the voices of FMI workers around the world. We are in for a treat this week because this week we get to travel to the Holy Land. That's right, we get to talk with FMI worker Liz, who is serving in Israel. You know, with so much noise going on in the news right now about Israel and surrounding areas, I just wanted to take a step back and hear from someone who's on the ground. But not just anybody, someone who's been in the country for decades and someone who is so in tune with what God is doing there. You know, Israel is God's chosen people and land, and so it's no wonder that they're constantly under attack. But even in the midst of what the news and the world portrays as devastation and hopelessness, there is hope in Jesus Christ. God is working in the Holy Land, and we get to talk all about it in this episode, so you do not want to miss it. But before we jump into that conversation, if you find this episode encouraging, would you do me a favor and hit that subscribe button from wherever you're listening? That simple thing ensures that you don't miss any episodes, and it helps us get this good news out to others. Now, on to my conversation with Liz. Liz Kopp, I am so excited about this conversation and having you on the Kingdom Footprints podcast. So thank you so much for taking some time to be with me today.
My pleasure.
Man, it is so exciting. You know, like I kind of said in the intro of this video, we're in a unique time in life right now regarding Israel and regarding politics and the coming of the Lord and all of the things that we will jump into that. And so I'm excited to have you on, but I just want to, get to know you a little bit and let our listeners get to know you a little bit as well. The first thing that I ask all of my guests is, when I come to Israel, and in the past, it's been very kind of hypothetical, but I actually get to come in 2026.
Awesome.
And so what is the first thing I need to eat?
A falafel, of course.
Oh, of course, a falafel. Okay. That is going to be on my list. I am a foodie. I love trying food from different nations. So okay, I'm going to eat my falafel, but in the meantime, would you just take a few minutes and kind of tell us about yourself?
Sure.
Married, kids, all of those things, because you have an awesome story.
Okay. Speaking of legacy, my children are seventh generation continuing ministries, and grandchildren will be the eighth generation of continuing ministries. So it goes all the way back to grandparents and great grandparents, and it for us to start in Israel actually happened in 1966 when my late husband, was asked by his parents and grandparents to go to Israel right after high school and run the bookstore that they acquired from a retiring Canadian minister. And that's a unique story in itself. I have to tell you that one because William Hull came here in 1936 under the British mandate, opened a book and Bible shop on Prophet Street and called it Zion Christian Mission.
Wow.
And he had Bibles in every language for every Jew returning from the diaspora into Israel. He wanted to make sure everybody had a Bible in their language. So that's what he set up to do here. And when he was getting ready to retire, he wanted to turn it over to a good minister, a good pastor. And it happened to be Chuck's father and grandfather, and who took over the ministry. But unique to this William Hull, not only was he here from 1936, but when the UN was wanting to partition the land between the Arabs and the Jews in 1947, President Truman, didn't want to come because he had a cabinet member who was virulently anti-Jewish. So instead of sending somebody from his own government, he told Canada to send somebody. They sent Justice Rand, who came, wanted to meet a Canadian who was living here. He met William Hull, and he told him why he was here. And he saw what the Jews had done with the land, and he was so impressed with the Jews. And when he spoke with the Arabs, all he got was a lot of whining from them. And so he wanted to meet a Christian and a Canadian. And he met William Hull. And over dinner, William Hull opened the Bible and pointed out all the reasons why he needed to vote for Israel to have a state when they had the 1947 meeting with the UN. So with that armed argument, he went to the UN, and the rest is history, because the UN voted that there should be partition, and the Jews were offered a piece of land. They accepted it. The Palestinians were offered a piece of land, and they rejected it.
Wow.
To this day, they rejected every opportunity to have a piece of land of their own that they could call their own land. So that's where we stand historically. And so in 1950, 1954, I think, when they captured Eichmann, the government of Israel asked William Hull to be his chaplain, to him the right of having a chaplain before he's facing execution, which he did. And William Hull became his chaplain and wrote a book about it called Struggle for a Soul, because he was able to prove to the government and to the people of Israel, Eichmann was no Christian. Eichmann had no belief in God, and he said he would do it again if he had the opportunity to redo the Holocaust. So that's the legacy we stand on in Israel.
Yeah, we were talking about legacy, before we started recording, and that is quite phenomenal. And what a legacy for you and Chuck and your kids and your grandkids. And so talk to me a little bit about that. So how long were you and Chuck married before he passed? And how many kids do you have, grandkids? Because I know you have a quiver full. How long have you been in Israel yourself? And maybe talk a little bit, I know it's legacy, but how did you guys get there, right? Like from the US, kind of that whole call, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So my husband came in 1966, right after high school. I came in 1967, right after high school. And my history goes back to my parents escaping from communist Czechoslovakia when the communists took power overnight. My father was a politician in the Democratic Party fighting communism, but they came and took in overnight, and they killed all his secretaries. He fled the country with my mother. They ended up in a refugee camp in Germany, where I was born. And in 1949, they made a passage to America when I was 6 months old. They became believers in the camp. My father was Catholic, my mother was Catholic, my father was Lutheran. In the camp, they got a care package from a Baptist church in Chicago, telling about people with personal testimonies of people in the package. My father read that, and he knew that's what they needed to know. They gave their hearts to the Lord. He brought the note to my mother, and the two of them knelt and prayed when one way they knew how to pray, and became believers and became missionaries in the camp. And so I was born into a believing family, and my parents came when I was 6 months old, and actually worked as indentured servants in Virginia for a year to pay back the passage. So when I learned Jewish history, I was wondering, how did you get into America? You didn't have family there. It turned out my father, being a politician, the ambassador from Czechoslovakia to America defected also, and he put up a bond for 100 political refugees. My father got in on that quota, so we were allowed to come to America instead of Australia.
Wow.
So then my mother became a citizen when I was 5. My father became a citizen when I was 16. In high school, I'm too busy. I don't have time to deal with paperwork, getting a passport. But then my dad came up with the idea that right after high school, I could make this trip to Israel with the Christ for the Nations. Were making their very first tour to Israel. My father already knew them well because he was translating Gordon Lindsay's books into Slovak. And so he wanted me to be on that tour because I was in a very rebellious state in my life at that point. I had been burned out by the dark side of institutionalized Christianity, and I was running away from God. So I was happy to go on this trip. And it was a 21-day tour to about 6 or 8 countries other than Israel. And when I got off the plane in Israel, I didn't have a passport because I didn't have time to get one. So the travel agent got me a travel document that allowed me back into the United States called a reentry visa to the United States. That's all it was.
Wow.
So every country I had trouble getting in. So the tour bus was waiting for me, and my future husband was on that bus. And already having lived here a year and already speaking Hebrew, he was able to finagle his way into the passport department and say, what's holding this group up? And they said, we don't know what to do with her because she doesn't have a passport. And so he vouched, signed a document that I would definitely leave with the group when they left. I wouldn't disappear into the country. So he was my knight in shining armor right from the start. Um, we got married in 1969, January 1st, and we have 7 fabulous children, 19 even more fabulous grandchildren, and number 20 on the way in January. So my life has been full.
That is amazing. And out of all of your children and grandchildren, do they all live there in Israel with you, or are they kind of spread out, or?
Currently, 3 are here, and 1 is in Italy. They run the Gordon College Extension Program.
Mhm.
Beautiful art program. Anybody wants to attend there. And one daughter and her husband were in Niamey, Niger for 7 years.
Wow.
And they're now back in the States. So I have 4 in the States and 3 here, and 1 in Canada.
That's amazing. I love it so much. Oh, there's so much I want to talk about. The primary audience of this podcast are believers and pastors. And so hopefully they have a little bit of Israel history, just even from a biblical standpoint and
Sure.
things like that. But can you kind of give us for those of us, myself included, that might be a little naive, just a little bit of an insight kind of into modern day Israel, like demographic, what are the faith beliefs that are going on, kind of some of the spiritual climate and need of what's happening kind of in Israel right now, just from a spiritual standpoint, because it is such a rich history, right? Like Israel's
Absolutely.
God's chosen people and it's the chosen land. And we see in scripture that that's where, Jerusalem's going to be. And so it's so
Right.
rich and deep in our faith history. But I know that that's not the climate necessarily right now
Right.
that we see, so speak to that a little bit for us.
Okay. Well, I could even right from the start, I can say with this 2-year war after October 7 has really turned many people to God. You can
Hmm.
see it in the testimonies on Facebook and on YouTube. People found God in the tunnels. Many of those hostages turned to God because they had nothing else. And
Wow.
God came to their rescue and revealed himself to them in a powerful way. So there is that shift in the spiritual climate in the country already. We can
Hmm.
feel it, we can see it, we hear it. Before October 7, the country is divided like America. You got left and you got right, half and half, right down the middle. You got the religious who hate they don't want to go in the army. They don't want to be part of the secular society. The secular society doesn't want to be tied to anything religious. So there are those battles all the time. But it's the only democracy in the Middle East. We have all 3
Mm.
monotheistic religions allowed to worship freely here:
Wow.
Christians, Jews, and Muslims. And everybody's free and open to share their faith as long as the person is above 18.
Okay.
And you can do that freely. So there are no restrictions in that way, except to minors. That's the only problem. And yeah, there is definitely a spiritual awakening after
Mm.
October.
Praise the Lord. How have you seen that, or have you seen that kind of shift or even like ebb and flow over the years? Because you said you got
Oh,
there
yeah.
in 66, 67.
Yeah.
So that's, over 50 years there on the field. So it's like you are Israeli almost, you know what I mean? Like, you basically are one
Yeah.
of the people, and so how have you seen that shift over the years that you've been there?
Amazing. I'll tell you what, when we came when I came on tour, we actually went to Gaza. Gaza was part of the
Wow.
tour. It was Party City. The
Mm,
Palestinians that were in Gaza because of the Six-Day War, they were so happy that Israel freed them from the Egyptian rule because they had family members in Haifa, Tel Aviv. They were excited to get the same liberties that their relatives in Israel had. They had the freedom to vote, they had the freedom to education, they had the freedom to medical,
mm,
everything. Whereas under Egypt, they were second class. They had no
wow.
help whatsoever. So that was Party City. We were watching the soldiers down there in Gaza, on the balconies and waving flags. It was quite something. And we used to go to Gaza often. The Baptists had a church and a hospital in Gaza. And we used to go there to minister quite often and share with the people there until the first Intifada.
Mm,
Then that was clamped down. But right before that Intifada, back in the 70s and 80s, there was a supernatural move of the Holy Spirit, and it hit every denomination in the city here.
wow.
The Scottish Presbyterian, the Baptist, the Lutheran, the you name it. They were having this independently. God was
Mm,
meeting them in divine supernatural ways. The Lutheran family, the couple, they had no children. They'd been married 17 years. They were laying in bed one night and the wife started speaking in tongues. She'd never spoken in tongues before. And the husband said, "You're going to have a baby in 9 months." It was a word of the Lord. 9 months later, they had a baby. I had the baby shower for them. The Baptists, one by one, they were experiencing powerful experiences of the Holy Spirit, even even freedom from demonic oppression. The list went on and on to the point where all the leaders of these different churches got together and said, "We need to meet once a month to share what's going on."
mm, so
So we did. We met every month in a different. Once it was in the Scottish church, once it was in the Anglican church, once it was in the Catholic church, and there was a and the Lord was just sovereignly doing it. And Chuck was part of it because he was the only one with the Pentecostal background.
he could explain it all.
Having grown up at Angelus Temple, that was his home Baptist church. So he was the bouncer when somebody came in with a false word, and he got known as the bouncer. And then the Lord just moved it on into the congregations in Jerusalem, and it's been an amazing thing to see. We're waiting for a new outpouring now, and
Hmm,
we feel it coming, especially
yeah,
after.
absolutely, yes. And so tell me a little bit about because I'm sure ministry has shifted and changed over the years, but currently, what has the Lord asked you to do? What do you guys have your hands to? Church plant, do you guys have the bookstore still? Are you still doing the Bibles? Like, kinda talk to me a little bit, like, what I hate saying what is ministry like, but what is the current assignment, right? Because ministry is everyday life for us as believers. It should be integrated into who we are, but what's the current, like, assignment that you are on in Jerusalem?
We have a two-eyed vision. We believe God has just as many profound promises for the Arab people as he does. Of course, he's chosen the Jewish nation to be his chosen people, not because they're better than anybody else, because that's just was his plan to do it that way. So we know the Lord is wanting to reach to everybody. And we even heard of Hamas testimonies coming out of this war as well. So God is moving among them also. And we have to remember that. My son, who often speaks, makes it a point for people to know we need to be praying for the other side as
Mhm.
strongly and as earnestly as we're praying for the side we've chosen.
Wow.
And we have deliberately, as a congregation, decided not to choose sides, but to show open hearts to both sides. And we have Jews and we have Palestinians and we have every kind of flavor of expatriate in our congregation. And we reach out to the people in the Palestinian Authority I've been working with orphans there since 1980. And to this day, the ones that I knew that when they were babies, I'm now like the grandmother to their babies, to their
Mm,
children. And it's a joy. It's a real joy to be able to share this word, the gospel, the good news with everybody.
that's amazing. I love it. Can you share one or two kind of stories? I'm thinking last week when or 2 weeks ago when we were originally supposed to record, we had to postpone it. A, because
Right.
Vance had shown up and messed everything up, but B, even more importantly, because you had a situation come up with a member of your congregation. But can you share a couple of stories of, like, transformation of what God has done, like, individual specific stories, not just the general move of the Spirit, which is
Right.
great, but, like,
Right.
individual
Right.
lives. Can you just share and encourage us with some of those?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The reason I couldn't even meet with you last week was because of the funeral of one of the um, family member of the Palestinian who's in our congregation. His wife passed away, and it was important to be at that funeral with him. Grew up here in Israel. He was in Bethlehem when the Six-Day War broke out as a 2-year-old. His mother was a nurse in a hospital in Israel. And because of the war, the Six-Day War, she was not able to get back into Bethlehem to get him. They were separated. He never saw her again. She never could find him. She was told he died. And he ended up in an orphanage. And he was abused as a boy by a Catholic priest. And when he became of age, he invited this Catholic priest to dinner. And when he walked in the door, he beat him to a pulp and ended up in prison. And he had this built up anger in his life from these life experiences. So in prison, God was able to open the door for my husband to get permission to have a Christian chaplain go in because they had rabbis for the Jewish prisoners and they had imams for the Muslim prisoners, but they had no chaplain for the Christian prisoner. So my husband was able to work with the Ministry of Interior and get permission for, and that wonderful, wonderful chaplain ministered to that dear man. His name is Hanna, and many, many months in prison, dealing with that anger, that built up anger. And finally, the Lord touched him so powerfully. He was able to let go of that anger.
Hmm.
And just 2 weeks before his wife passed away, he gave his testimony in church and then went and had a water baptism in the Jordan River. We were all there. It was just beautiful. And he came out of that Jordan River just shouting hallelujah and praising God. And it's amazing to see the change in his life. And so that's one
Praise the
testimony.
Lord. Yeah,
Yeah.
praise the Lord. Do you have another one? I could listen to
Yeah.
these all day.
We have a dear lady, a Jewish lady in our congregation. She's a Holocaust survivor. She's 87.
Wow.
She was 3 years old when the Germans came, and she was hiding in a convent. The nuns were hiding all the Jewish children they could, but someone ratted on them, and the Nazis came in, and everybody was taken to the camps. She was taken along with her mother. She was 3 years old. She spent 4 years in the camp from age 3 to age 7. All
Hmm.
she remembers is the fear of her mother never returning to their bed that night. She was left alone all day while her mother had to work. When her mother came back, that's all she can even tell about the camp experience because it was so
Wow.
horrific for her. God spared her mother, and they were both able to come out alive. And when they came out, her mother said, "We have to go to church. We have to go to
Mhm.
church." And thank God. So when she came to Israel, I was looking for a Holocaust survivor to tell their story, and someone told me about her. And I'm from Czechoslovakia, so I speak her language. And it was love at first sight. Here's this dear, dear Slovakian lady. And so we invited her to our congregation to tell her story. She told her story from beginning to end and just thanked God for a congregation to be able to go to and worship on a weekly basis and enjoy the fellowship and share her love for the Lord.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. Not to, turn it into anything political, but seeing over these past 2 years have been such a pivotal part in world history,
Yes.
and it feels like it's, kind of that whole repeating thing. There have been multiple key points, but were there any or are there any kind of challenges? I know you said that you guys can speak openly, which that is kind of new to me even, about being able to
Mhm.
speak openly about Christ to adults. But did you guys come up against any challenges and, like, pushback from government, from people over the past couple years? Because I know all we know, right, in America is what the US news tells us, which we know
Sure.
is not the full story. And so can you kind of, like, pull back the curtain of what the news didn't tell us, because everyone's like, "Oh, don't go to Israel. It's a scary place. It's dangerous. It's this and this." And that might be true in some parts, but, there's parts of the US that you should never go to either because it's super dangerous. But can you kind of pull that back? And I'm remembering, like, I think it was about a year ago, we were on an all-worker call for Foursquare Mission, and, you and I were in a breakout group, and I just remember you telling me that I believe it was your grandson was fighting, like, was in the war, but yet you were at complete peace at that moment in time still. And so can you just kinda speak to that a little bit, because 'cause I'm like, yeah, it kinda makes sense even though Israel
Yeah.
is up in flames, so to speak, you're actually probably in the safest place, right? Because, like, the Lord has his hand on Israel. So, anyways, can you kinda speak to that a little bit? Just give us
Yeah.
the untold story of these past couple years.
I would say just from the volume of rockets that fell on Israel, hundreds and hundreds from various different countries, not just one country. The hand of the Lord had to be on it, that more people weren't killed. They weren't killed. I mean, a few. It's just phenomenal. The the atmosphere in Jerusalem itself, you wouldn't even know there's a war going on. You go into any mall, it's full of people, Arabs and Jews, anywhere. All the restaurants are filled with people. We didn't even know there was a war going on if you didn't listen to the news. I go into the West Bank, into the Palestinian areas a lot. I go to Jericho, I go to Bethany, I go to Bethlehem quite often, several
Mhm,
times a week. And sometimes there's a block there, they've locked the gate, you can't go in, or I
mhm.
find another way, go around the back. But no, there's amazing opportunities here to just see what is available, and it's a wonderful place to visit. It's the roots of our faith in this land.
Mhm,
Come and see Arabs and Jews working together in any level of society, from the government down to the hospitals, down to street cleaners, you name it. They're in every facet of life here. So the hardships, we've had a few. We've
mhm,
had our bookstore burned down. We've
mm,
had our church burned down to the ground in 82. We had another fire in 1970, in 2007. And periodically there would be paint on our church walls. Missionary dogs go home. And there's always some militants in every side. In every
mhm.
society, there's always militants who do this. Whenever we've been attacked, government officials would come and stand in solidarity with us, um,
Wow,
announcing that kind of activities.
that's amazing. That is just so it's so encouraging to hear stories of the faithfulness of God. Like,
Yeah.
I think we all know God's faithful. We've all experienced his faithfulness in our
Mhm.
own ways, but we get encouraged by the word of the testimony of other people. And
Yeah.
so that is so encouraging. Do you guys still have the bookstore? I know you have your church, but is the book still up and running?
No, the one that we had on Prophet Street, the government, the city planners wanted to widen the road there, so we didn't bother to open another one because our church had one at the time.
Okay.
And there is a Christian bookstore in Jaffa Gate connected to Christ Church. And so none of us felt we needed to repeat that. And so we no longer have the bookstore,
Yeah. Wow.
but we still
So,
provide all the Bible.
okay. Yeah. So, we had touched on it briefly a few minutes ago, but as a congregation, what are some of the things that you guys are doing in the town? Like outreaches or,
Mhm.
um, you know, just different ministry things? Because I'm sure you do more than just a Sunday morning or a Saturday night service. So what are some of the things that you guys get to do to serve your city and the country?
A lot of it is done on a personal friendship evangelism. In fact, across the board, that's the way it's done. We have
Okay.
people working in home for elderly. We have people working home for handicap. We have people working in uh, variety ways of. There's schools, Christian schools. There's one in
Mhm.
Bethlehem, in Shepherd's Valley, and so we have you name it, we're there.
You're there. That's awesome. Gosh, I could keep asking all sorts of questions, but I wanna be mindful, of time as well. But as somebody who has been not only in ministry, but has been you've been walking with the Lord, been in ministry, but you've been on, the field, right? Not in your home country of origin or birth, um, for quite a while. You're a trailblazer, you know? You are a trailblazer for those of us that are newer to international missions and being on the field. You're a trailblazer for those who have been on for 20 or 30 years. And so first, I just want to say thank you for your faithfulness to the Lord and thank you for your faithfulness to what God has called you to do. It's encouraging to me. And so as that what I see as a trailblazer, someone who, has been the machete and I'm sure taken some nicks and some hard things in order to make it easier for those that follow. Can you just give us some wisdom? I know that's very broad, but what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's maybe looking into doing missions as a career or who isn't on the field yet, or maybe someone who like myself has been on the field for less than 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, can you just kind of give us some wisdom? If I was sitting on that couch, if I was in your living room, I would be sitting on the floor just at your feet, just kind of listening and, much like Jesus' disciples did to him, just give us your wisdom. How do we do this?
Yeah, I think the Lord gives each one of us different passions for the lost in different ways, and it's always been my desire to just do what the Lord wants me to do for this day. And I just turn to him and seek his will for the day and let him guide me and lead me. And it's amazing to see what he brings down my path in that day. And then I realized you are such an amazing organizer, Lord, because it just everything dovetails, everything fits. Even the need to find a parking place because you're going to have to be somewhere at a certain time. And, and God opens a way, makes a parking place available. Had that happen so many times. And trusting God for everything. I mean, we
Mm,
raised 7 kids here when there were a lot of suicide bombers back in the 80s. Your kids would get on the bus to go to school, and if God isn't protecting them, there's nothing you can do as a mother or a
mhm,
father. And so many times our kids just miss being part of a terrible, tragic situation.
wow.
And just trusting the Lord for every day, every
Mm.
step.
It sounds so simple, yet sometimes it's so hard to do that. But no, yeah, I receive that. I hear that, where it's even in those small detours, of you don't understand why you're not doing
Mhm.
this or in the moment, I was
Right.
supposed to be back in Belize already and I've been here for 2 months back in the States and I'll be here for another few months and at first I didn't see why and now I'm like, "Oh, that's why. Okay,
Mhm.
Lord, I trust you,"
Right.
and yeah, we just
Right.
have to trust the Lord.
Exactly.
That is very helpful. How can churches worldwide outside of Israel, how can we partner with you in prayer and different things like that? I don't necessarily mean financially because, well, I'll make that known later, but just what are some key ways that we can be praying with you and, yeah, just partnering you and supporting you?
Sure. My main prayer request that I've always asked for is wisdom for day by day, because so many different situations crop up immediately, and you need God's wisdom to handle it, to deal with it. And I so cherish those prayers for wisdom.
So good. That is so good. How can people, if you want them to, how can people get in contact with you? Do you have a newsletter? Do you have an email? Do you have
I do try to send out email with the latest story
Mhm.
and requests for prayer. So yeah, you can post my email.
Okay. And so if people wanted to get on that newsletter list, they just need to email you and ask to be added, or is there a different way? Okay. Awesome. Then yeah, I will put your email address in the show notes below. Gosh, again, I just want to sit and listen to your stories all day. I am so excited to come to Israel next year as an organization, as Foursquare Missions International, we get to come and as workers just kind of get refreshed and encouraged and encourage each other. And so I know we're looking forward to that.
Hmm.
But is there anything that I haven't asked or we haven't covered that you might want to share, you might want to touch on, just because, yeah, we're just hearing a different side of the story that I don't think we get to hear very often.
Just come with an open heart and realize no one's perfect. Israel as a country is not perfect. They make a lot of mistakes. They do a lot of things that we would like to see changed, as well as among the Palestinians. There's so many things you would like to see different, but we have to trust all these people to God. And if for the leaders, pray that God will give good leadership, righteous leadership, and come with an open heart and see what God will want to say to you when you walk
Mhm.
where Jesus.
Mhm. Goodness, so exciting. I know that's uh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a trip that I know a lot of believers, hope to make in their lifetime. Um, and I think that what you just said is gonna help answer part of this question, but for those that aren't able to make a trip to Israel and to walk where Jesus walked and see, rub elbows with people and hear stories on the ground, can you help us, pastors, church members, again, those of us that don't get to see it every day, can you just kind of help us shift our mindset or our perspective when it comes to viewing the war, Palestinians, Hamas,
Mhm.
Israelis, Jewish people? Can you just help give us that mind shift? Because I believe that, in the Western world, we're very one-minded. But can you give us a different perspective and just help us? Like, how should we pray? What can we do to shift our minds and shift our perspective?
Okay. When I came to Israel, I came, like I said before, in rebellion against the dark side of institutionalized Christianity. I wanted nothing. I knew God gave Chuck to me because he embodied Jesus to me, loved me unconditionally, and he allowed me to work through my darkness. And
Mm,
it took a while. I refused to go to any meetings with him. I threw myself into existentialism. I had no desire to be any part of anything religious. And the more I saw the religious here, the Orthodox Jews or the Muslims, how they were so bound by these rules and regulations. And this is the very thing I was trying to run away from. And I thought, wow, some of our Christian institutions are no different than Orthodox Judaism
that's
or
true.
Islam. And so in my heart, seeking for God and wanting to know where the truth is, we actually made a trip to Sinai when I was in my 20s. And I was at a point of desperation to crying out to God that night. We were going to climb Mount Sinai before sunrise. So it was freezing cold that night, and I was miserable, so miserable, telling God, I can't live the religious life. So what am I going to do? I know there's a God. I know I need God, but I can't do this religious life. And God spoke directly to my heart. He said, I don't want you for any of that. I want you for me. It set me free like Christian in Pilgrim's Progress when that burden rolled off his back. I think I flew up Mount Sinai that morning. I was so thrilled with that sense that, oh, that's what it's about. It's about God. What does he want from me? Now I can read the Bible again. Now I can see, because I need to know who is God and what does he want from me. And that took a while. And it was a climb up the ladder, sometimes falling back a little bit, but getting off that ladder and finding out who God is and what he wants from me. And when I look at Israel today, I see them as a prodigal son. They are the chosen, but they're seeking after everything else other than what God has for them. So when you come, don't look at perfection. It's not here. Don't look to see perfection. God is perfect. Only God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful story. And that's helpful for us to remember. It's not yes, we have assignments on this earth, but ultimately it's about him. It's about God. And
Mm.
it's not about the institution of church. It's not about the perfect programs that we have. It's about God and about his people. That's the strategy that the Lord's given you guys of, hey, one-on-one, that's all it can be, right? Yes, you might have a gathering, but one-on-one. Wow. Well, Liz, as we come to an end, I just want to thank you for taking time. And I know this has been helpful for me, and like I said, just watching at a distance, personally, of just seeing what God's been doing through you and through the faithfulness of your and Chuck's ministry over the years. And it's encouraging to me of like, okay, we could do this, Stacy, like in those moments for me on the field, or maybe there's pastors that are listening that are like, Lord, what is going on? I can't do this. Like this is hard. We get to look to people who have done it and are still doing it, and see, okay, we might be facing a little bit of a trial. And I know that you have faced trials over the past 50, 60 years, probably personally and in ministry. But you're still standing, and I can still just see and hear in your voice the deep love that you have for the people that you get to serve. And that's beautiful. And I love how the Lord does that. Like he puts those people individually into our hearts, like the way you talk about Jews and Muslims and people that you get to serve is the way I talk about Belizeans. And it's not that we don't love the other, but they're not who we're called to. So we can tell. So anyways, I thank you so much for all of that and everything that you've just shared over the past, 45 minutes or so. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we head out?
Just welcome everybody to come. Come see me here and get to know the country and the land and the people, all of them.
Yes, yes. If you are a follower of Jesus, it's highly encouraged to make that pilgrimage to the Holy Land and see everything. So my only regret is that I'm not going to have enough time to go everywhere. I only have a few days. So, well, Liz, again, thank you so much. And, I'm going to put in the show notes below how people can get in contact with you, get on your newsletter. Are you on any sort of a social media at all, or?
Our congregation has a media,
Okay.
narkis.org, narkis.org.
Okay.
And the organization that gives us the right to be here, started by the Canadian, JerusalemCornerstone.org.
Awesome. So I encourage everyone to go and check those websites out as well, just to read a little bit more, see how you might be able to get involved. And I just encourage you, seek the Lord. What is he asking you to do across the street, around the corner, or maybe in Israel? But I just ask that you would seek him. Liz, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it so much, and I cannot wait to be with you in Israel next year.
Same here. Can't wait to see you here.
Y'all, wasn't that a great conversation? I just love hearing the stories of what God is doing in Israel, in all the people, not just the Jewish people. And so I'm so grateful that Liz was able to take some time and pull back the curtain to what we don't get to see, to the things that, the news wants to point out certain things and they all have their agendas, but God's agenda is always going to reign and it is going to be supreme. And so Liz was able to just pull back that curtain and give us a little bit of insight. And I'm so thankful for that. I know that she has so many stories of transformation, and I love that we just got to hear a couple of them. And I think one thing that really stuck out to me from this conversation is that Liz didn't go to Israel on mission. She didn't go with this mindset of, I'm gonna bring everybody back to Jesus. She wasn't even sure if she believed in Jesus. She wasn't sure what she wanted or who she wanted, or she was just asking questions. But she met Jesus on Mount Sinai. And I think that is so beautiful. And she met him and her life was changed. The trajectory of her life and ministry and legacy for her family was drastically changed. And so if you are listening, you might be in that same type of thing. And you may not be able to make a trip to Israel and climb Mount Sinai like she did, but Jesus still wants to come in and transform your life. So all you have to do is just pray in whatever way you know and ask the Lord to show himself to you, and he is faithful. Hey, if you were moved by what you heard Liz talking about, or maybe you have a few more questions and you're wanting to figure out how can I get involved, please email her. Her email address is down below. Get on her newsletter. She sends stories out every month, and she would love to talk to you more. Maybe even just drop her a little note of encouragement. She's been on the field for over 50 years without really knowing it, at the beginning. But just drop her a note of encouragement, maybe. If you want to partner with her financially in what God is doing through her in Israel, please visit give.foursquare.org/Liz. I have listed it below as well. And you can partner with her financially on a monthly basis, on a special gift basis. It is all very helpful to keeping her on the field and maintaining the work of the ministry and what God has asked her to do. So until next time, remember to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your Lord. You are on mission no matter where you're at, whether it's in your backyard, across the street, or around the globe.